The house felt different the moment Daniel Carter was gone. Not just quiet, but hollow, as if the walls themselves had lost their warmth. Emily Carter noticed it the first night she returned home after the funeral. The living room looked the same. The couch sat in the same place. And Daniel's favorite chair was still beside the window. But the life inside the house had vanished. Emily stood in the doorway for a long moment, holding her purse, unsure what to do next. For 30 years she had shared every part of her life with Daniel. Now she stepped into the house alone. She slowly walked through the living room and touched the back of Daniel's chair. His reading glasses were still sitting on the small table beside it. For a second she almost called his name, a habit built over decades. But the silence answered her. Emily closed her eyes and took a deep breath. At 52 years old, she had never imagined this life. Daniel had always been healthy and strong. He loved hiking, fixing things around the house, and making bad jokes that only Emily laughed at. When the heart attack happened, it was sudden and cruel. One moment they were planning a summer trip, and the next moment Emily was standing in a hospital hallway, hearing words she never wanted to hear. "I'm sorry. We did everything we could." The days after the funeral passed in a blur. Friends came to visit, neighbors brought food, relatives called every day to check on her. Emily thanked everyone politely. But inside she felt like she was moving through thick fog. The hardest moments came at night. She would lie in bed staring at the ceiling, remembering the sound of Daniel breathing beside her. Sometimes she reached across the bed without thinking, only to touch the cold, empty sheets. Weeks passed. Life outside continued like nothing had changed. Cars drove past the house. Children played in the street. People went to work and talked about normal things. But inside the Carter home, time seemed frozen. Emily stopped cooking proper meals. Most nights she ate a small sandwich or a bowl of cereal. The television played quietly in the background. Just to break the silence, one afternoon she sat at the kitchen table looking through old photo albums. There were pictures from their wedding, family vacations, birthdays, and holidays. In every photo, Daniel was smiling with that same calm, warm expression. Emily gently ran her fingers over one picture from years ago. It showed Daniel holding their young son Ethan at the beach while Emily laughed beside them. A tear slid down her cheek. Just then, the sound of a car door closing outside caught her attention. Moments later, the front door opened. "Mom." It was Ethan. Emily quickly wiped her face before he entered the kitchen. Ethan Carter was 26 now, tall like his father with the same dark hair and thoughtful eyes. He worked as a graphic designer in Portland, about 2 hours away. Before Daniel's death, he visited once every month or two. Now, he came almost every weekend. He stepped into the kitchen carrying a small grocery bag and smiled gently when he saw her. "Hey." Emily tried to smile back. "You didn't have to drive all this way again." Ethan placed the bag on the counter. "I wanted to." He looked around the kitchen. The sink held a few unwashed dishes and the refrigerator looked nearly empty. "You haven't been eating much, have you?" he asked softly. "I eat," Emily said quickly. Ethan didn't argue, but his expression showed he wasn't convinced. He began unpacking groceries: fresh fruit, vegetables, chicken, bread, and a few other things. "I thought we could cook dinner together tonight," he said casually. Emily watched him move around the kitchen with quiet determination. For a moment she saw a glimpse of Daniel in him. The same caring nature, the same calm way of helping without making a big deal about it. That night they cooked pasta together. It was the first real meal Emily had eaten in days. They sat at the table talking about small things: Ethan's work, a new design project he was excited about, and a funny story about his coworker. For the first time in weeks, Emily laughed. It felt strange but good. After dinner, Ethan quietly washed the dishes while Emily sat nearby. "Mom," he said after a moment, "how are you really doing?" Emily stared at the table. "I miss him," she whispered. Ethan nodded slowly. "I know." For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then Ethan walked over and hugged her. The next few weeks followed a similar pattern. Ethan continued visiting often. Sometimes he stayed the entire weekend. He fixed a broken porch light, cleaned the garage, and repaired a loose fence in the backyard. But more importantly, he kept Emily company. One Saturday morning, he knocked on her bedroom door. "Mom, get dressed?" Emily looked up from her book. "Why?" "We're going for a walk," she sighed. "I'm not really in the mood." Ethan crossed his arms playfully. That wasn't a suggestion. Emily couldn't help smiling a little. 20 minutes later, they were walking through a nearby park. The autumn air was cool and fresh. Leaves crunched under their shoes as they followed the quiet path. At first, Emily walked slowly, her shoulders heavy with sadness, but the fresh air and sunlight slowly lifted her mood. They passed families playing with their children and couples walking their dogs. At one point, Ethan said something funny about a small dog wearing a bright sweater, and Emily laughed again. It was the first time in a long while she felt something close to normal, as the weeks turned into months. Ethan kept encouraging her to leave the house more often. Sometimes they went out for coffee or lunch. Other times, they visited a local bookstore Emily used to love. One afternoon, they sat together in the backyard, drinking iced tea. Ethan leaned back in his chair and looked at her thoughtfully. "Mom, can I ask you something?" Emily glanced at him. "Sure." He hesitated for a moment. "Have you thought about what you want your life to look like now?" Emily frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Ethan looked toward the trees. "I mean, the future." Emily stared at her glass dot. The word future felt strange. For months, she had only been thinking about the past. "I don't know," she admitted quietly. Ethan nodded. "That's fair." After a pause, he continued carefully. "Dad loved you more than anything." Emily felt her throat tighten. "I know." "And because of that," Ethan said softly, "he wouldn't want you to spend the rest of your life alone." Emily looked at him in surprise. "Ethan, I'm serious," he continued. "You're only 52. You still have a lot of life ahead of you." Emily shook her head slightly. "That's not how it works." "Why not?" "Because," she said slowly, "your father was my husband for 30 years. Ethan nodded. "And nothing will change that." Emily looked away. "But that doesn't mean your story has to end." His words stayed with her long after he drove back to Portland. For the next few weeks, Emily thought about that conversation often. At first, she pushed the idea away. The thought of starting over felt uncomfortable, even disloyal. But the loneliness inside the quiet house never fully disappeared. One evening, Ethan arrived again with his usual relaxed smile. "Mom," he said as he walked inside, "I have an idea." Emily raised an eyebrow. "That usually means trouble." Ethan laughed and pulled a laptop from his bag. "Just hear me out." He placed the laptop on the kitchen table and opened it. Emily leaned forward curiously. Then her eyes widened. "Ethan." The screen was a dating website. Ethan tried to keep a straight face. "Before you panic, let me explain." Emily almost laughed in disbelief. "You can't be serious." "Em," he said. She shook her head immediately. "No, absolutely not." "Why not?" "Because it's ridiculous," she replied. Ethan leaned forward. "Mom, it's just a way to meet people." Emily crossed her arms. "I'm not interested." Ethan didn't give up. "Just try it once." She stared at him. "No, one profile," he said. "No, if you hate it, we delete it." Emily hesitated. The idea sounded crazy, but also strangely intriguing. She looked at the screen again. People smiling in photos. Short introductions, small glimpses into different lives. Ethan watched her carefully. "I'm not saying you have to date anyone," he added. "Just talk." "Two people," Emily sighed deeply. "You're very persistent." "I learned from Dad." She laughed quietly at that dot. After a long moment, she finally said, "Fine." Ethan's eyes lit up. "Really? Just one profile?" she said firmly. "Deal." They spent the next hour creating it together. Ethan helped her choose a nice photo and write a short description. Emily felt awkward the entire time, but also oddly excited. When they finally finished, Ethan leaned back proudly. There, Emily looked at the screen, unsure what to think. This feels strange. That's normal, Ethan said. She closed the laptop. Slowly, neither of them realized that this small moment at the kitchen table would soon lead Emily into a completely new chapter of her life, and what she would do next would surprise everyone who knew her. Emily almost deleted the profile the very next morning. It felt strange and uncomfortable, like stepping into a world that didn't belong to her. She wasn't sure why she had agreed to it, but Ethan's insistence had pushed her to try. Questions, the photos, the little bio she had written, all of it seemed foreign. She stared at the laptop screen for a long time, unsure whether to log out or continue. After a deep breath, she decided to give it a chance. It's one small step. She told herself. Just one small step. The first few days were quiet. Messages trickled in slowly, most polite, some funny, and a few confusing. Emily wasn't sure what to say to strangers who didn't know her life, didn't know Daniel, and certainly didn't know the grief she carried. She typed short, careful replies, hesitant but willing to respond. Her heart raced every time a new message popped up. It had been years since anyone had looked at her that way, with curiosity or interest. And it felt both strange and oddly thrilling. One evening, she opened a message that stood out. The sender's name was Michael Harper. His words were simple, but carried a calm sincerity. Hi, Emily. I lost my wife 3 years ago. I understand how difficult starting over can be. If you'd like to talk sometime, I'd enjoy that. There was no pressure, no attempt to impress, no flattery that felt forced, just understanding. Emily stared at the screen for a long moment, reading it over and over. Something in his words felt safe, comforting. She typed back slowly, unsure what to say. Their messages soon became conversations. They shared stories about their late spouses, about their children, about the small joys and difficulties of life after loss. Michael lived in Seattle, a city a couple of hours away, and had 2 grown daughters. He was retired from firefighting and carried a calm, grounded energy that made Emily feel unexpectedly at ease. It's the simple act of chatting with someone who understood loss without judgment brought a small, cautious warmth back into her heart. Weeks turned into months. Emily found herself looking forward to Michael's messages, the anticipation giving her day a new rhythm. His words were thoughtful and kind, and she felt her laughter returning in small ways. The evenings she once spent staring at old photographs, alone, were now filled with the light of her phone screen, reading his messages, or recounting small stories about her day. The quiet house didn't feel quite so empty anymore. Her thoughts were often filled with the gentle presence of someone. Eventually, Michael suggested a phone call. Emily hesitated at first. Talking to a stranger's voice felt more immediate than messages on a screen. But she agreed, and the first call was tentative and cautious. His voice was calm, steady, and warm. They talked about the weather, favorite books, small daily frustrations, and the memories of their spouses. Michael listened carefully when she shared stories about Daniel, never interrupting, never judging. Emily realized she was speaking more freely than she had in months. After a few more calls, Michael suggested meeting in person. Emily felt a rush of nerves she hadn't experienced in years. Meeting someone face to face after loss felt like stepping into a different world, one she hadn't allowed herself to enter. She told Ethan about the invitation, bracing herself for his reaction. His grin was wide, encouraging, and a little teasing. "I knew this would happen," he said lightly. "You'll be fine." The day of the meeting, Emily drove toward the cafe in Seattle with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Her heart raced, palms slightly sweaty as she parked and walked inside. There he was, standing near the entrance with a slightly nervous but warm smile. The moment their eyes met, a strange comfort settled over her. It was a relief to see a face that felt genuine, a person who seemed kind and patient. The conversation flowed effortlessly. They shared memories, hopes, small jokes, and the gentle understanding that comes from having lived through deep loss. Michael spoke of his late wife with tenderness, not sadness, and Emily realized she could do the same. Hours passed in what felt like minutes, and when they finally parted, Emily's heart felt lighter. Her step a little quicker and her smile genuine. Over the next year, their relationship blossomed slowly but steadily. They traveled together, visiting small towns along the coast and exploring hidden parks and beaches. They shared dinners with each other's families, creating new traditions while honoring the past. Emily found herself laughing more, thinking less about the loneliness that had once pressed so heavily on her heart. Michael's presence didn't erase Daniel, but it offered a new layer of warmth and companionship. Emily remained cautious. Wasn't ready to share everything with everyone just yet. She wanted to see where this could go before revealing it to friends or extended family. But the truth of her feelings grew stronger each day, a quiet certainty that she hadn't felt. Since Daniel's passing, Michael made her feel alive again, and for the first time in years. She allowed herself to imagine a future where happiness wasn't just a memory, but a present reality. Thanksgiving arrived, and the entire family gathered at Ethan's house. Emily had been nervous all day, unsure how to bring up the news she had been holding in. As laughter and conversation filled the room, she felt a moment of quiet clarity. This was the right time. She stood, drawing everyone's attention. "I have something to tell you all," she began. Her voice was steady, though her heart pounded. She reached for Michael's hand, and he smiled at her supportively. "We're getting married." The room froze for a heartbeat, the words settling. Then Ethan stood up with a triumphant grin. "Finally," he exclaimed, and the room erupted into laughter, applause, and happy chatter. Relatives expressed surprise, curiosity, and eventually joy. Everyone could see the light returning to Emily's eyes, the calm certainty in her demeanor. She had taken a step she hadn't believed possible months before. And it was real, honest, and beautiful. Later, as the house quieted and the family dispersed for the evening, Ethan hugged his mother tightly. "Dad would be proud of you," he whispered, and Emily's eyes filled with tears. She felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for her son's gentle persistence, for Michael's patient love, and for the courage she had found within herself. Emily realized that moving forward didn't mean forgetting Daniel. It didn't mean erasing the past or feeling guilty for happiness. It meant acknowledging that life could still be full of joy, companionship, and love. The house that had once felt hollow now seemed warm again, filled with laughter, conversation, and hope. Her journey had begun with a simple step-up, hesitant profile on a dating website, and grew into a beautiful second chance. She had learned that it was never too late to embrace life, that love could return in unexpected forms, and that family support could guide her toward happiness even in the darkest times. Months later, Emily and Michael continued to build their life together. They celebrated birthdays, holidays, and small victories. They shared quiet mornings with coffee and long walks with their dogs. Emily discovered a sense of peace she had thought was gone forever, a steady rhythm of joy that didn't erase her loss but honored it alongside new beginnings. Through it all, Ethan remained her anchor and her cheerleader. He reminded her to laugh, encouraged her to take risks, and shared in the excitement of seeing her happy again. Emily often thought about how different life had seemed the day Daniel passed away. And yet, here she was, live, vibrant, and in love once more. The shock of Emily's decision to embrace a new relationship surprised many. But those who loved her saw the truth immediately. She looked radiant, confident, and at peace in a way that had been missing for too long. She had faced grief, navigated loneliness, and taken the bold step of allowing her heart to heal and expand. Emily's story became one of quiet inspiration. It wasn't about rushing through grief or replacing love. It was about courage, family, support, and trusting that life could offer new beginnings even after great loss. Every day she reminded herself that happiness wasn't a betrayal of the past, it was a celebration of the life she still had and the love she could still give and receive. And in the end, Emily knew that losing Daniel had not ended her story. It had created space for something new, unexpected, and deeply fulfilling. With Michael by her side and Ethan's unwavering support, she embraced this next chapter with hope, gratitude, and a heart wide open to the possibilities that life still held. She had discovered that life could be beautiful again, that love could arrive in gentle, patient ways, and that sometimes the most shocking and surprising moments were the ones that led to the deepest happiness. Emily had taken the step forward, and it had transformed her world completely.